Hi, Brad.
Howdy.
Nice to have you here.
Great to be here.
It feels like it's a good time for superheroes. You know, you have Black Panther coming out, you have Avengers coming out. What makes The Incredibles special?
Geez, I don't know. You throw a rock and you hit a superhero these days, don't you?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. No, I think I think the little place that we staked out was not superpowers for superpowers' sake, but to use them to comment on roles within the family and certain periods of your life. I mean, that's how I picked the powers. I picked them around the positions in the family.
What do you mean?
Well, men are expected to be strong, so Bob is super strong.
Right.
Mothers are pulled in 10 different directions at once, so I have her be elastic. Teenagers are defensive and insecure, so I had her be invisible and have force fields. And 10-year-old boys are energy balls who want to open every door and press every button now. And babies are unknowns. They could have no powers or they could have all the powers.
Well, this is what's remarkable to me, because I want to point out that the film's about, a time where superheroes are outlawed, and it's a big conversation about whether superheroes should come back. But as much as it's about that, it's also about, like you said, it's about family. It's about parenthood.
Right.
How much of this is informed by your own parenthood?
It's half influenced by the family that I grew up in with my sisters and my parents.
How many of you?
Well, five. Well, 4 kids,
Yeah.
6 and 5 in my family, 6 in the family that I grew up in.
Right.
And half of it is based on the family I have with my wife and sons. So it's all of that combined into a gumbo of spy movies and superhero things and action adventures that I loved when I was a kid.
Any specific things, any real life things come from your own life, make it into the film?
Yeah, all over the place. I mean, an argument that is in the first Incredibles where Bob and Helen argue about one of their kids' graduation, in quotes, is an argument that my wife and I had,
Yeah.
Guess which part I was.
Do you play around with the voices at home? Do your kids? How old are they?
They're all in their 20s now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But they were young when the first one came out. Then.
Yes, and my middle boy, Jack, was a baby when I first came up with the ideas, and we called him Jack. So
Made it in.
Yeah, he made it in.
But was it exciting for them to have the dad behind the big film of the year, behind the film that...
Well, it was weird because, I was working on this thing, but I didn't really show them any of it until the wrap party, And so I like to do that because I like it to be all spiffy and finished when they see it.
I would have thought, I think a lot of directors, if they make films like this, they would be showing it to the kids to get feedback halfway through.
Yeah, yeah.
No?
No. I always go, it's not ready yet. It's kind of like saying, hey, check out my new car. It's all in parts across the front yard, but it's really cool. It's
Yeah.
going to be great when it's together. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always wait till the car's together. And that was one of the highlights of my life, sitting there with my boys leaning forward with eyes wide open going, wow, I mean, yeah.
Is the car ever really together though? That's an interesting question because
how
do you know when you're done?
You never quit thinking about what you would improve on the car.
Right.
Right now, there's like 3 shots that I wish were a little different in the movie, but so be it.
I had a filmmaker, I can't remember who it was, but he said to me one time, he said, a film's never finished, it's just taken from you.
That's right. Yeah.
You feel that way too?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, if they'd given me, another week, I would have done more stuff.
Take me back to when you were 11 years old. The story is you went to Walt Disney. You were inspired to become an animator. Can you paint me a picture for people listening to this, what you saw that inspired you so much?
Well, I mean, like any normal kid, I loved cartoons. I mean, I loved animation. I was particularly fascinated by the Disney films because of the thoroughness of the imagination. When Pinocchio goes underwater, you believe that that's how it should be, even though he doesn't breathe and neither does the cricket. And apparently you just need a rock to hold you on the bottom of the ocean and you're fine.
Yeah.
So there's nothing real about it, and yet it was completely convincing to me. So I think that was sort of the magic trick that never could be explained. But I sort of knew that there were a lot of drawings involved and all of that, but when I saw Jungle Book, something inside me snapped because I recognized the distinctness of the vision, meaning that when I saw the panther jumping across onto a branch, it didn't just look like a cat. I mean, somebody had studied cats. It looked like a panther versus other cats. And it didn't just look like a panther. It looked like a panther that was sort of stuffy, you know. So
It's the details. It's the
yeah, but it wasn't just that. I realized that someone did that. Someone's job on the face of the earth was to figure out how a stuffy panther would move. And I thought, that is the coolest job in the world. And up until that time, there were a few moments, you know, when I was a kid, you see this, you know, my parents would have a party or something, and there'd be this forest of legs moving around and this kind of, you know.
Yeah, the Charlie Brown teacher
Yeah,
noise.
and it wasn't interesting to me, and it seemed all in slow motion and kind of like, I don't want to be one of those guys, you know? And then there were these little epiphanies, like I remember hearing a Jonathan Winters album that my parents had bought. And here was this guy making these crazy noises and voices and stuff, and he was accepted. He was an adult who was not only accepted, but he was appreciated for doing this.
Yeah.
And I started going, wait a second, maybe being an adult is kind of interesting. And then this was another one of those moments. You know, figuring out how a stuffy panther would move sounds like a fascinating job.
Can I tell you what I love about this is that I appreciate the story and I love the story. I love how wide your eyes got when you talked about the panther. Like I can tell you still.
I'm still impressed by that panther.
But you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I don't think you lose that.
No, and in that particular movie, the same animators who did the stuffy panther had to figure out how a old over-the-hill prize fighter bear would be, and how a really arrogant tiger would be, and how a hypnotic snake would be. And I'm just saying that they got to transform themselves into all kinds of different things that were very particular. Like here's a problem that an animator has to deal with. You want your character to shrug. Okay, your character is a snake.
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you shrug as a snake?
So the snake obviously doesn't have shoulders.
No, but he.
How do you do it?
Well, the animator, I think it was Frank Thomas, folded his body up in a way that suggested shoulders, and then moved up in relation to its head. And he goes. The line is. He says, where would that be? And he goes, search me. And he didn't want to say that because he's got Mowgli, who the tiger is looking for, up in the branches. He doesn't want to be searched. And then as soon as he says it, he realizes he's said too much, and he swings his body around to cover his mouth. And, you know, so it's creating the snake body as shoulders, it's making it hands, and that's just genius. And, you know, they're miracle workers, those guys.
I'm happy we got you on this because I want to play something else for you. Take a listen to this.
Now, think of the happiest things. It's the same as having wings.
Let's all try it, just once more.
Look, we're rising off the floor.
Jim and me.
Oh, my. We can fly.
You can fly.
We can fly.
You're just tuning in. You're listening to Q.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to Brad Bird, who wrote and directed Incredibles 2. Apparently voiced Peter Pan as well.
No.
I had no idea way back when.
That was Bobby Driscoll.
That's the Disney classic.
There you go.
Peter Pan. You know,
Yeah.
I think we're living in a time where we're looking at live what do I call that? Live action adaptations of cartoons. And you're seeing the Lion King coming out soon,
Right.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I know you're fond of Peter Pan.
I am.
What can animation do in terms of Peter Pan that like a live action reboot, like the one that was on, I think it was on ABC, couldn't do, or NBC
Well,
couldn't do?
that was, you know, that's a question that has really kind of become obsolete.
Yeah?
Yeah. When I first started in the animation business as a paid employee, there were old timers around, and I'm not talking about the old Disney masters who I still revere to this day and will always revere. I'm talking about the more kind of hacky animators,
Right.
you know? And they would say stuff like, well, listen, kid, if you can do it in live action, you should never do it in animation. And I was thinking,
What?
yeah, they said that, and I was thinking at the time, well, if you believe that, then you're going to be obsolete because very soon they're going to be able to do anything in live action. And that's not the reason to do animation anyway. The reason to do it is caricature. That's what animation is great at. And caricature is a word that's often used derogatorily, but actually it means reducing something to its essence. And that doesn't just mean making things bigger in a drawing or making things louder. It also can mean making things tinier or smaller. It's about intensifying whatever the essence of that thing is. You know how
what does that do for us? What does that do for us as viewers?
Well, I think that if you look at a good caricaturist, somebody like Hirschfeld, Al Hirschfeld, do you know who he is?
No.
He did the caricatures for theater from the New York Times for like 100 years, practically. Great. So he would do a drawing of a person, and the drawing of the person would look more like the person than the person did. And you're just going, how is that? It's because they took what was distinctive about the person and emphasized it and took away the things that didn't emphasize it. So it becomes this, it's almost like boiled down to its essence. Well, animators do that not only with the style of how something looks, but how it moves. Have you ever watched somebody who's a really good impressionist spend 10 minutes with somebody and then secretly away from them be able to imitate how they sit, how they gesture, how they...
Yeah.
Well, that's what animators do, and they can push it to an amazing level. And if you combine that with graphic things that also say what a person is, it becomes this very concentrated way to look at things, and it's its own thing. It's fantastic.
I love how much you love it, man.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well, thanks.
Let's be honest, there's no shortage of people in your position who would be pretty jaded by now.
Oh, yeah, and I can bring out the jaded aspect of my personality. I don't think you'd want him on the radio.
No,
you
maybe
know?
not, but it's nice to see. I don't know. It's nice to see, you know?
He cohabitates with my more hopeful side.
But when you were talking about the old timers just then, that's when you were starting out. Now you're the honcho. Now you're in charge of these things.
old timer. Listen, kid. I know you have hopes and dreams now, but you'll learn.
Give me a way you convey what you want to the artists who help make these things. That's what I understand it takes a village, it takes a city, it takes a continent to make these things. And I'm always very perplexed as a non-animator of how it goes from your brain to these people. What's the best way you use to convey it?
Well, it depends which part of the process you're talking about. If you're talking about the storyboarding process, then it's all about the overarching story, and it's about character moments. And you know, I remember doing very detailed screenplay pages for the 100-Mile Dash, a sequence we call the 100-Mile Dash, which was in the first Incredibles, where he goes running from the velocipods and all of that stuff. And there was, I wrote it out, and the person who storyboarded it just had him run on water. And I said, no. When he runs on water, he thinks he's going to fail, and then he finds that he can run on water, and he's exhilarated by it. You know, and so it wasn't just the action. The action wasn't enough. It's how does the character feel about the action, and then action becomes character, which becomes more interesting.
I got to talk to you about your role as a honcho a little bit more.
Oh, honcho.
Pixar being this incredibly successful company.
Yes, I'm the editor of Honcho magazine.
Yeah, you should see. Yeah. If you're listening to this on the radio, you should see his cravat. It is remarkable.
You know, that with the ascot.
Yeah, a cravat and an ascot. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
My father used to wear a dickie. You know those things, like the old fake turtlenecks.
And apparently only Dickies wore them.
Yeah, apparently so. Listen, I got to ask you about this. It's been a hard year for Pixar. Late last year, John Lasseter, head of Pixar, took a leave of absence because of sexual misconduct allegations, which he denied. But again, I want to talk to you as a leader. Listen, I know what it's like on a show like this to have this kind of history. I'm interested in you as a leader, because a director is a leader, how you talk to your staff about these allegations, how you deal with it.
Well, you know, we had a year taken off our schedule when Toy Story 4 wasn't quite coming together the way they'd hoped, as quickly as they'd hoped. Our story was a little more together. I didn't think it was much more together, but it was a little more together than Toy Story 4's. And so they pushed us up a year. So suddenly we went from having enough time to having barely enough time. So that was my focus. And I said, look, I know these are weird, insecure times, but don't forget what I actually spoke to my crew in the wake of
I was going to say,
that.
what do you say, right?
Well, I said, don't forget why you came here. You came here to tell stories.
Yeah.
And that's what you should focus on now. All the other stuff is distractions. You know, you're here to tell a story around a campfire, and the campfire is as big as the world. So, you know, focus on that. That's why you came here. That's what's going to matter.
Right.
All of this other stuff will come and go. What sticks around are the stories.
For me, I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of work environment do I create for the people who work on the show here.
Mm-hmm.
Did that cross your mind, like the importance of a work environment?
Well, it has crossed my mind as long as I've been directing because, you know, I quickly found out. I worked, when I wasn't directing, I worked on several films that were very badly managed.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably learned as much, if not more, from, well, I had a lot more of those experiences than the good experiences.
Right.
And I saw how people get demoralized, and I saw how money was spent, too.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes people bring employees down, and then they try to, then they get, it drags the work down. And then they try to compensate by making them work more hours.
Mm-hmm.
So the people get progressively more miserable. And the biggest, most significant line that never shows up on a budget that makes a huge impact on the budget is morale. If morale is good,
If people feel good, if people feel safe, if people feel happy.
and feel like they're being listened to
Yeah.
or at least appreciated, then for every dollar you spend, you get $3 worth of value. And if morale is bad, for every dollar you spend, you get 25 cents of value.
Right.
And so it's a huge factor in the quality of your work.
Yeah, I don't know why people don't see that. That's you know, that a healthy work environment is ultimate. You're going to get more out of it.
Exactly, and you can bump that up to a societal level if you wish. You know, I feel like that's going on in the world every day. You know, we have this huge income inequality, and listen, people aren't owed money just for breathing, but you know, the society itself becomes a better world to live in if more people are, you know, feel somewhat fulfilled in it. I mean, that's part of your surroundings. And it seems like some people amass great money and then they build up barriers so they don't have to look at the rest of the world. It's miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And if they just kind of made it a little more equitable, then the world itself around them would be a better place to be.
I want to get your perspective on animation a little bit more, if that's all right.
Sure.
Animation, specifically the idea, you've talked a lot about how it's a medium that's not for children. In fact, I bristled a little bit at myself when I said cartoons earlier, because I don't know whether that's
Yeah.
like,
That's not a bad word.
all right, I don't know.
A lot of people use it as a bad word, but
I mean, I'm a folk musician, so sometimes I say movies and people say, you should please say films.
yeah. No, it's much more upgraded.
You've made animated films that are very, very popular with adults. I'll say that. And animation's still on its own category at the Oscars. Why do you think that perception that animation is somehow for kids still persists after all these years?
I think that it's a difficult, complicated question that probably could take up an hour of your time.
What are you doing?
to get into it?
I'll order us a couple of cocktails. It'll be great.
Yeah,
Don't worry
it'll be
about it.
fantastic. We'll go all night long. The short answer is that some of it is because of history. You know, the fact that people think of Bugs Bunny as a kid's cartoon, but if they do any homework at all, they realize the cartoons were made for adults who were about to see the next Humphrey Bogart film or the next Bette Davis film. They were not made for kids. They had enough slapstick in them that kids could enjoy them. But it wasn't until the 50s when television needed kids' entertainment that they had all these cartoons that kids would sit still for and watch. That they started thinking of it as primarily a children's medium, and it isn't. It just isn't. I think animators don't help often by perpetually bringing up stories that are kid-oriented stories and proposing, how about if I do another Leprechaun film?
Yeah.
Or Fuzzy the Bunny. How about Fuzzy the Bunny 2? You know, and it's like, well...
Hey, Fuzzy the Bunny 2 is pretty good.
Hey, man.
Come on
you
now.
know, quite frankly, they took the franchise in unexpected
really
places.
did. Yeah, they really did.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, I had several friends in school, and you know, some of them were very outspoken about what animation should do. And then I see later on when they get out there, they start proposing Fluffy Bunny 3, and I go, well, wait a minute. Remember all that stuff you were pounding the table about in college?
Is it just dough? Is it just they want?
I don't know. But it's enough of a thing that it needs to stop, I think. Listen, Ralph Bakshi tried to deal with it by going completely away from it to making things with a lot of sex and violence and profanity and ensuring that no kids could go see it, at least at the time. And there's something to be said for it, but it was kind of a simplified, you know what I mean? There was something crude about it. And it's like, adult also can be, you know, Maltese Falcon, or adult can be, you know, Bridge on the River Kwai. You know, that's not a child's film, but it's a great story.
Yeah.
And why can't animation do that? I mean, it has done that. You know, Persepolis is a really interesting subject for an animated film, and I'm glad it was made.
What's the best thing you've watched recently? Incredibles 2.
No, and what's terrible is, well, that's practically the only thing I've watched lately.
I would guess so.
But, you know...
Do you find time to watch anything?
I do, but, you know, usually around when I'm finishing a film, then it kind of goes into a black hole because there's so many details. But surprisingly, for somebody who's generally a little bit outspoken about sequels, I thought Blade Runner 2 was amazing.
Yeah.
Blade Runner 2049.
2049, yeah. We flew to Montreal to talk to Denis Villeneuve about it.
Well,
yeah.
I thought, and it was one that I kind of thought, that's okay, the first time I saw it. And I thought, but I want to see it one more time. And I saw it another time, and I was like, holy crap, how much stuff did I miss? There, you know, and
maybe I should watch it again.
Yeah, and try to get a big screen and crank it.
It's cool to have you here. I think we're going to do it. Let's do it. All right. So you're here to talk about Incredibles 2.
You looked to the outer room and you said, "Shall we do it?"
I think we're going to do it. So we were on your IMDb page. I didn't know you were responsible for this. I didn't know.
Yo, hey, what's happening, dude? I'm a guy with a rep for being rude, terrorizing people wherever I go. It's not intentional, just keeping the flow. Fixing test scores to get the best scores. Dropping banana peels all over the floor. I'm the kid that made the delinquency in art. Last name Simpson, first name Bart.
Oh man, so that's Do the Bartman.
That is Do the Bartman.
I will say I'm one of those people who loves The Simpsons a lot. Like, I'm one of those people who quotes The Simpsons. I know of your involvement with The Simpsons before I knew of you coming in here.
Right.
I did not know you were involved in the Bartman.
I was the sucker that took on that assignment.
How do you feel about it now?
You know, it's a quirky thing to have in your resume. It did very well. It was the #1 video in the world for a couple of weeks. So,
and were you proud of it then?
Yeah. I mean, look, it was the hardest thing I've ever done because I had to go to Hungary. We couldn't produce it in the United States because everyone was working on the show. And they had this album coming out, and they wanted to get it out for Christmas, and so they wanted a video to go with that song.
Yeah.
You know, and because of Michael Jackson's participation with that song. He didn't write the song, but he kind of was involved with it.
Yeah.
So they asked me a couple of times, and I turned it down, and finally they begged me and you know, said, this is really important. And so I said, all right, I'll do it. And I went over to Hungary, and in Hungary, they had only had the Tracy Ullman 1 minutes. So they thought that Simpsons was super crude.
I should be clear. So if you don't know this, before The Simpsons was The Simpsons, like the cultural icon that it is right now on television. The half-hour show. It was a series of shorts on a variety show called The Tracy Ullman Show.
That's right. And they were like a minute long to 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
They were just little interstitials.
What is mine? Don't matter. What is matter? Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
What does matter? Never mind. Anyway, they thought that was what we were going to do. So they were very confident that they could pull that off. And I landed and I said, okay, here's what it is. It's a big dance thing, and we have almost every character that's ever been in The Simpsons is going to be seen in it at some point or another. And it's all original animation. It's full animation. It's not limited. And their faces are going white. And they're going, well, no, Simpsons is this. And they show me one of the 1 minutes. I said, no, man, that's like 2 years ago. This has to be, a real video. And that means the characters are going to move around and dance and do all. We have 100 characters, and they just started going, ah! And, we had to do it in about 2.5 weeks, a 5-minute film with a crew that primarily did not speak English.
Right.
It was being advertised as it's going to be premiered globally at the same moment all over the planet. And so they were making these announcements, and we didn't even have a film. And, I had this cool camera at the time. It was a very, good, video camera. I was going to take it with me on the plane, and I had the negative with me. And I didn't have there was no other copy. And I had to take it with me. And they said, well, you have to check one of them. And I went, I'm never going to see this camera again. And I tearfully gave them the camera that I knew would never arrive in the United States, and I slept with the negative between my legs in the chair, so that no one could move the negative without me knowing it, and it was the only copy, so it was really, really, really hard to pull off, and you wouldn't know it from looking at it. It looks like a trifle, but we basically got every animator in Hungary involved.
I love that story. And now 30 years later, here you are.
I'm still feeling the pain.
Nancy Cartwright told me that it made her career when she knew she was famous.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
When she was driving down Sunset, and it came on the radio.
Wow.
And she said, wow, I made it now.
She's a rap star.
Thanks for coming in.
You bet.